Hey everyone, it's Ryan. Welcome to this week's Moms in the Middle talk. I am here with three of the other ladies in the Moms in the Middle, and we're excited to talk to you today about solitude. What does that mean? What does that look like? And we're excited. So, each of you, would you like to introduce yourselves? Katie May, go for it.
I gotta unmute myself. Hi. Yes, I'm Katie May. I am CEO and founder of Katie May Coaching and my free community of Marriage Empowered. I am a marriage empowered coach, and I help women transform their marriages into the relationships they've always wanted. Short story on me.
Thank you.
Anyone else? You guys want to take a turn? No, just me.
Yeah,
I thought she was gonna choose somebody else, so I was just waiting.
Sorry, I should have because I chose Katie, and then Katie should have chose someone.
Ashley.
Hey guys. Hey guys, I'm Ashley and I'm the host of the Solitude Girls podcast. I am the resident hype mom. I like to encourage moms in their journey of finding their best selves and living their best lives in a non-phony, non-pretend, that faux positive way, like really, truly where you're bearing fruit and loving life and having your spicy marriage that you've always wanted and actually enjoy raising kids. So that is me. And I'm excited to be here.
Yay. You're the hype girl and you're spicy. I love it. Love it. So I'm Michelle Porterfield. I'm host of the Set Free Sisterhood podcast and alcohol-free and breakthrough coach. And I really just help women to stop over drinking, or if they decide to just ditch the wine witch altogether, get their control back and just really create a life of fulfillment that they're designed to have based on what God's calling them to do in their life. So
amazing. Thank you, ladies. And I'm Ryan Channel. I am the host of the Wellness and the Word podcast, where I am just really passionate about helping women seek and know God personally and intimately and creating their own relationship with Him and kind of taking the mystery out of what that means. So we are also missing two of our other amazing ladies, Kristen and Katie Lynn, but they'll be on another time with us, I'm sure.
It's Katie Lynn's birthday. Everyone say happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Katie Lynn.
I'll watch this later, so it'll make sense.
Yeah. Okay. So we're talking about solitude. Do you guys think that solitude is a Christianese word? Because like sometimes, when you're in a church or like your faith is a big part of your life. Like sometimes I'm like, is that a Christianese word? I wonder. Do you guys think it is?
I don't know.
Maybe we don't know because we're already because it's part of our, it's part of my.
I don't associate it.
Yeah.
I don't know. Mm-hmm. That's not what comes up for me. In my own upbringing and my experience in my church, and I don't think that solitude is really a thing that even comes up for me in relation to it, honestly. So I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think of when you think of solitude?
For me, I think of just being alone, like just doing my own thing, not including anyone else. I also think of rest and recharging because I can only people so much, and then I need to be alone, and that's how I recharge. So
I'm glad you said rest, because that was something like when I coach, sometimes when I'm talking about like the health side of things, I coach on sleep and rest separately though, because sometimes I think we kind of use them interchangeably, but they're very different, right? Like we actually need rest throughout our day, throughout our lives. So I love that you said that.
That's a good point, right? Like we can kind of commingle the two, and sleeping can be a form of resting,
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But like we should also rest through our day. And like that. And one thing that I share is like, you actually need like 20 minutes of a rest every 90 minutes, which who does that? Like who does that?
A lot.
I would like to, but I don't. Or we rest.
Hold on, let me take my 20-minute nap.
Or we rest by like social media or maybe relaxing with wine, Michelle, but like, are we really resting in that?
No.
Well, yeah, that's a whole different conversation of like how to really describe and dial that in, right? Yeah. So for me, when I heard you say that too, solitude, I was like, no, I don't think that's a Christian thing. Like, now in my life, I understand that, getting still and being with God is a form of that I do alone by myself without other people. But I kind of even thought about like, like monks and things like that, like just that are on a spiritual journey, or anybody that is really wanting to develop. I think they have a high respect for solitude. That's kind of what I thought of.
That's good. Yeah, I don't think that solitude, I mean, I didn't grow up in the church as a child or anything, but if anything, it was like the opposite. Once I started getting in church, it was like find your community. Like everything was about, a small group, a youth group, some sort of
other people.
Like yeah, like that was always pushed, where I wouldn't have thought solitude. But when I think of solitude, I don't think about it as a thing, but as like an opportunity of like facing your fear of meeting with yourself. Like, because a lot of, which I don't even know, that may open a whole other can of worms for you guys, but that's what I think of as like the thing we avoid the most, because it is so hard to sometimes look at the person in the mirror. And when we're busy, it's easy to just be like, oh, I don't have time for that. Like all this trauma, or all these things that you haven't dealt with before. It's like, oh, I'm too busy. And you don't slow down to be like, whoa, like my inner trash can is on fire. Like I need to pay attention to it or something. So that's what I think about, which I feel like is way left field from what you
know. No, I love that. I love those perspectives. Like, especially because you're right. In church, we talk about community a lot and the importance of community. And maybe we don't talk about solitude enough. And like, we see in the Bible examples of Jesus going off alone all the time through his ministry, to be alone, to be with God, to get away from people, to recharge. And so no, I love what you said. And then I think we are afraid of being alone and like being with our own thoughts. So that's why we don't truly rest. We get on social media, we drink, so it's all connected. I love it. That's crazy.
I'm just having like this massive breakthrough over here. It's cool. Just keep going.
Yay!
No, but when you were talking about like how, I think you're right. I think part of it is like also like how we internalize it, right? Like, so, and I think for women especially, because so much of our lives is about other people, kids, moms, right? Our kids, our husbands, like we don't value our alone time. We look at it as like a nuisance, right? Like I have to put like a great deal of mental energy against like mom guilt when I am serving myself, right? Still to this day. And it's like, I have to remind myself like, no, I need this so I can be this version of myself for them. Right. And so like the vision of you talking about Jesus going away and seeking God and getting away from people, like, that was just really, it was really powerful for me, because that is so, it's so important. And I think we just devalue it so much.
We do. Yeah. And like, we are probably apologetic and like you said, guilty. And like, he was probably never like, sorry guys, I gotta go. He was just like, I have to do this to pour in myself from my Father, or else like none of these other things can happen. Right. But you're right. I think like we don't see the value in solitude or quiet time for ourselves because we constantly have to give to our families. And then we're probably placing our worth in a lot of that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And if he was like the superhuman, right? Like the ultimate, and he still had to find rest, he still had to go to solitude. Like what makes us think that we can like, that we're like Mighty Mouse over here and we can just keep on going, right? Like we're crazy if we think that, we can't, or we don't have time for ourselves. Yeah.
And that's the other thing that I've taught about is he literally designed us to sleep for such a huge part of our lives, it's got to be important, right? Like, I know this is kind of aside from like the difference between rest and sleep, but also connected. So it's like, we need that. We need the sleep. We need the alone time, the rest. And you also mentioned earlier, like about getting alone with ourselves is important, right? And I think of, when I talk about having a relationship with Jesus, I equate it to relationship with people. You have to spend time with them to have any type of substantial relationship, right? Like a connection, to know each other. And you need that, like with yourself too, to really know yourself, who you are, what you want. And if we're not doing that, again, we're like placing all of that value on in other things and in other people. And like, what if all of those things and people were gone tomorrow? Then you're left alone, and you don't even like to be alone. And
yeah, that's like what we talked about last time was, you know, that's where you find yourself lost in motherhood or like in the busyness of life. It's because you forgot about the girl right here, right in front of you, right? Like you didn't make any time for her. So what happens when you take away the kids? What happens when you take away the husband or the family or whatever that you've spent so much time focusing on, and now you're stuck with a stranger and you're like, who am I don't know this chick. Like, what happened to her? It's like, well, you know, you didn't spend any time with her. You didn't get to know her. You haven't asked her what she likes. You haven't asked her what's wrong. You haven't asked her how she's doing. And yeah.
So that's so good to think of it like, how do I treat other people? And then how do I treat myself? Like, so good. Such a good connection. So do you ladies seek solitude for yourself? And if you do, what does that look like for you? Or do you think like maybe you don't do it enough?
Every day. Every day. Cause you know, like Katie said before, maybe before we recorded, like, I mean, and I'm a super extroverted person, but I'm around people a lot and I enjoy that. But there comes a time where, you know, I've really got to really restore my energy. And so I don't necessarily, the only time I'm really quiet by myself is in the mornings, like when I'm having my quiet time and journaling. But I always get somewhere. It's usually a walk. And it's more worship music, but I'm totally alone. And, you know, there's been times through the years where, you know, I've asked my husband to walk with me, or, you know, my daughter will occasionally, but there's been times where they ask me to go and I'm like, no, this is my time. And, you know, I really value that, even if it's usually about 30, 40 minutes. So I highly prioritize that, but I didn't used to. That's just because of where I'm at now.
Yeah, that's good. So mostly walks and like journaling, you said, Michelle?
Yeah, for sure.
I do the same. And mine started with my morning routine. Is like, I needed to do some kind of exercise, some kind of quiet time with God. So I just started with like 10 minutes of journaling of what I'm grateful for, setting my thoughts on the good things, and then just being quiet with him. And I have like a really hard time staying still. So same. I got to get out, I got to go for a walk. I got to move around. But it is my time. So again, did not used to do that at all, but that was and has been such a game changer for me in my life. Like on days I miss, I'm like, oh my God, who am I? What is this day gonna look like? It immediately switches from like being intentional to reactive, right? Like it's so important for me, for sure.
Oh, good. That's so good.
So for me, that looks like probably going to the gym. So even though I'm surrounded by a bunch of people, I have my headphones on. Nobody bothers you when you're at the gym, you know, typically. And so for me, it's like just evaluating, what do I need right now? What will serve me most right now? And sometimes it's skipping the gym and going rollerblading. Sometimes it's dancing, like putting on music and I'm dancing for no reason in my barn. I was gonna say living room, but like it's all one square. So I was thinking in my head, who are you kidding? You don't have a living room.
In my barn.
Yeah.
Fellow rollerblader, Ashley, how did I not know this? What?
Because it's scary to rollerblade out here, so I don't ever video it, but it's like really hilly. And
you
then
don't
the
take
last
selfies
time,
of yourself like I do.
no.
Oh my gosh, wear a GoPro. It's hilly. I just like, oh
I
my gosh,
know,
I
yeah.
with you.
No, last time, scary. I got chased by dogs last time, and I was like, I am too old to run in rollerblades. But yeah, I think it's just evaluating like what you need and what. So what does that look like? Like for me, it is really hard for me to sit down. I don't like quiet a lot of the times. I don't like being still. It feels very unproductive to me. So like making myself do that is me telling myself like it doesn't have to be monk like I don't have to meditate and like, you know, you don't have to force yourself to do something that makes no sense for you, like, or that isn't going to serve you. So I think just like we talked about last time, it's like finding and trialing and erroring, like what is refueling you, like what kind of solitude, what kind of moment by yourself is actually going to bring you fulfillment, like what's going to serve you. And then that can vary day to day, week to week, based off of like what season of life you're in, what's going on, and what you feel like you need to hold back your crazy, right? Like
yes, I love it. No, for real. And I like that you said that too, because it doesn't have to be something specific. Like it doesn't have to be in the morning. It doesn't have to be 30 minutes. It doesn't have to be anything that it is for anyone else. It's what fills you up and what fuels you to not go crazy, to not be reactive, but to, because yeah, when you know, you're just like your whole, that everything is just frazzled and you're like, I need a moment. So even if it is like a moment of, let me take some breaths. And I hear that all the time and I'm like, whatever. And then sometimes when I do it, I'm like, oh wow, I really did just need like some deep breaths, you know? So whatever it looks
that's
like,
the thing, yeah.
Build it in.
Well, that was huge for me in my my early days when I removed alcohol. I required solitude because when you take off and it, you know, I always say drop whatever it is in there that you're coping with. When you remove that, there's like this buzzing that happens because all of this stuff's going on. There's things going on like chemically in your body and just the stress, the cortisol levels and things. And so, you know, you're still functioning because you're still either taking care of kids or going to work or whatever. And it was just a very clear boundary that I knew I had to set. It was in the evenings. I was just like, all right, I'm out, y'all. I'm going to my room. And, you know, sometimes I would go to bed early. Sometimes I would just, you know, put on soft music or just read. But that was, I mean, that was a key player for me because you can get so overstimulated. So I hadn't thought about that in a while of how important that was.
I think what stuck out to me about what Ashley even said too was productivity, right? Like we've decided that solitude is not productive. And it's like, it's so weird because it's neuroscience even shows us that we are more productive when we do get and make times for these breaks.
Yep.
And so this idea that we have that we can just and should be just on all the time, available to anyone and everyone who needs us, is very counterproductive to what we as humans actually function as our best selves as. So if you have that belief in your mind that like solitude is unproductive, I should be available, you need to just slap that shitty lie right out of your face.
Yeah, that's like the literal opposite. And when she said that, it stuck out to me too. I wrote it down because I was like, and I think you and I talked about this recently, Michelle, like we think we, you know, need to be like in control and be productive. And if we're not doing something, but that's just like a lie to keep us busy, to keep us distracted. So we don't. And it's maybe like a subconscious thing that we are like, well, then I have to sit and, you know, be alone with my stuff. Right. So yes, that is so big.
But mentally, like I have to remind myself of that too. Like I find it's not like something, it's like, oh, I've got this, I've mastered this. I just sit in peace in my solitude. Like, it still takes like me talking myself through and Michelle was really good at this because she used to be my life coach, and she was really good about making me like pay really close attention to like my inner dialogue, right? Like, what am I believing? What am I telling myself? And that stuff I also work with my clients on too, because if you don't know what's going on up here, like you can be sitting in solitude and you're just full of anxiety, and that's not doing you any good, right?
Right.
So
true.
yeah.
That's so true. It's not just about like sitting there and being like, okay, let me sit down and get my 20 minutes of solitude and rest.
Yeah.
Well, and a lot of women are really afraid of doing that. I just thought of a client of mine that she couldn't stand being by herself. And it took her a while to finally realize that was what it was. And that's why she kept drinking, was because she couldn't stand her own self. And it was really because she was afraid of her thoughts. And we have to get to a place where we realize, like, they're not going to hurt you. What's going to hurt you if you just continue to believe them and let them stay there. So there's processes to get them out and learn from them.
Yes.
And you talked about like a couple minutes ago, Michelle, about like the coping mechanisms that we use in place of kind of the solitude, and it's the busyness, it's the alcohol. For me, it's like the lashing out in anger, and getting curious about all those things is huge, right? To like ask yourself like, okay, why do I choose to lash out in anger in this situation instead of just like stepping away? But like for me, it totally is like a coping mechanism. And I think that's a big part of it too, is just if I took the time to be in solitude more and be intentional about it, like you're saying, because we could be productive. Like we have 350 things to do every minute, right? Like, and we're thinking constantly about all the things we need to do. But if we could be more intentional about it, and like you said, Katie, like I'm not great about this, and I know the days that I'm like, I should have spent time today. But yeah.
How do you, just out of curiosity, how do you feel like the anger is your coping?
Well, I've been getting curious lately about my own anger, because and what I think that I'm learning is I kind of want to make other people feel bad, which sounds terrible, but then it doesn't make me feel better, but it like calms me down for some reason. Like I want everybody to know what they did wrong and what I'm mad about and why it's their fault, instead of taking responsibility.
Okay. So like a deflection?
Yeah, a little bit, maybe. Okay. I'm still investigating.
No, I was just interested.
But does it make sense?
Yeah. I was, because you said it was like a coping, and it's like when I hear coping, I always like, I hear like I drank wine nightly for my coping for a while. And then anger was my go-to response, but usually it was as a result of me being hurt. I never looked at it like a coping, right? Like, but I guess that would make sense because my real emotion is hurt, but I'm exhibiting anger. So that would make sense.
Yeah.
Well, and it's on the top, right? That's the iceberg stuff. So it's sitting on top, and it's like, oh, okay, she's just upset. It's kind of like people can kind of, oh, okay, they're mad or whatever. It gets different when there's like, it gets weird in the room if there's like vulnerability and tears and all that. So it's kind of like easier to go to anger.
Yeah.
Right. Which would be why it would be coping. So that's why I think that makes sense. But I've never heard of like it put that way, like anger used as a coping, right? So that's what like was like, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
But,
I think that's so growth.
You're defensing, it's a defense. It's a defense mechanism.
Totally.
And that's really what it is. Like when we're sitting in solitude and we want to scroll mindlessly on Facebook or binge watch Netflix because we don't want to sit and actually deal with the crap that's going on inside us, right? Like it's all coping.
Yeah. Yeah. And I never
against all of that, by the way, just so you guys are listening. Just saying like you can't have any Facebook or Netflix, but
no, not at all.
Coping.
But yeah, I was really convicted. Like God opened my eyes to that recently. And I was like, man, that was a hard reality, but I needed it. And I'm still, working through all of that. So.
Well, and that's why it's so unusual to really hear somebody say that, is because that's just because of your growth. Yeah. I mean, there's probably a lot of women listening going, huh? And they notice they get angry a lot. They have no idea. So you probably just really opened some thoughts for them. That's great.
Yeah, good. I'm glad. That's awesome. Thank you, Michelle. All right, ladies, this was so fun. Anything else about solitude?
We all need so much more of it.
Yeah, we do. I know. I look forward to it. I think it's interesting though, because I think that it's kind of become a more popular topic, whereas, maybe 10 years ago, it was like nobody wanted to be alone. And it looks scary, or it looks like you're lonely and depressed or something, but it's important.
And there could be people really, because I just thought of some ladies that I know that are older, that are widowed. They're kind of on the opposite. Like they spend so much time alone, especially through the pandemic where they couldn't go anywhere, that I'm actually seeing them now, even coming out the hair salon and stuff. And they're just like, they're really struggling with the loneliness factor of all that. And how can they immerse back into community? So I think we just have to, just always be open and aware of, this really is, it has to be customized for anybody's lifestyle.
Yeah. I love that. I love how we always like can see the other side of things when we have these talks. Like there's usually like one or the other, right? And next week we're going to talk about that, right, Michelle? We're going to talk about community. Yeah. So you guys can look forward to that talk. All right, ladies, thank you so much.
Thanks, girl.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Thanks, guys.